So those of you who are visiting our church today, my name is Pastor Brian Smith. If you hear anything you don't like, I love email. Please email me at Brian@Christ Community Church. No, actually, our lead pastor, Brian Smith, is traveling today. He's not available to be here. I'm one of the elders. My name is Joe, and I'll be delivering the message today. You know that phrase, you get what you pay for. They didn't pay me anything to do this today, so let's just all bear with each other. When Brian asked me to speak, he said, hey, I need you to deliver the message for me. I'm going to be out of town, and I need you to speak on 9/11, September 11th. And that was like the first thing that just hit me, like 9/11. Wow. Okay. So I think if you're behind a podium today or on a stage today and you don't address 9/11, at least have a moment of silence about it, you're kind of missing the boat. So in thinking about September 11th, I mean, it was, what do you say about it? It's so big, it's so overwhelming. An event like that, hatred and violence like that. And I think three things kind of popped to my mind. It was, what could I do about something like that? Will it make a difference? And why? It's so hard to try to even envision what I could do that could directly impact that. Don't get me wrong, there are people that are doing the Lord's work right now, in the Middle East and all over the world in ground zero in this battle, and they're changing hearts and minds. And that's great, but when we sit here in our lives in Ware, New Hampshire, and we say to ourselves, what could I possibly do to have an impact on that? What could I possibly do to move this thing in a better direction or the right direction? What I come back to is I think, there's evil in this world. We don't always understand it. We don't get it. And there's good and love in this world as well. And as Christians, we're called to live through this lens, through goodness and love, tolerance and kindness. And I think as we pour into people's lives around us, it does have a ripple effect. The love and the tolerance and the goodness that you pour into your children has an effect. What you pour into your children's friends has an effect. The organizations we choose to support with our money has an effect. The way we interact with people in the grocery store, in the workplace environment, when these contentious issues come up, do we interact with people from a standpoint of tolerance and kindness and love? All that has a ripple effect. And I think every time we behave that way, it's a brick that's laid in the foundation for goodness in this world. And it does counter, the evil that's in this world. Is it going to make a direct impact overnight? Maybe not one that you can measure, but I certainly think it makes an impact. So one of the first scriptures I want to look at today, I think really frames this for us. If you have your Bible with you, go ahead and you can open it up to John 13, 34, and 35. Because again, this is the lens through which we're called as Christians to see this. This is Jesus, to set a little context, talking to his disciples when things are just about wrapped up. He spent a few years with them. They've learned a lot. He's getting ready to go to the crucifixion and leave them. And basically he looks at them and he says, guys, look, if you forget everything else that we've talked about, if you forget all the parables, if you forget, all the specifics, I want you to remember this one thing. And he says, a new commandment I give to you, that you love one another. Just as I have loved you, you also are to love one another. By this all people will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another. So he sets that out as the supreme commandment for us to operate in life, in all our interactions, with all the people we come into contact with. And I don't think he's talking just about our closest friends and family, our buddies we play golf with on Wednesday, or the people in our knitting circle. He's talking about everybody, including the people that you view the world differently from, that you don't agree with, that are hard for you to interact with. In thinking about this, I think one of the big reasons that an event like 9/11 happens is intolerance. I think love, maybe you can have love without kindness. I'm not sure. I suppose you could kind of make an argument that you could, but I think they're really connected. And I'm not sure that you can really have love for somebody or a group of people unless somewhere you find it in yourself to have kindness for them. And I don't think you can have kindness for them if you don't have tolerance for them. Now I'm sure that there's probably some people whose like hair's prickling up on the back of their neck with this whole tolerance thing. I want to be clear, tolerance does not mean not speaking the truth to people. Tolerance does not mean you live a life without confrontation or conflict. Tolerance does not mean not defending yourself. It doesn't mean any of those things at all. I think if we look to Christ's life, we can see very clearly in the New Testament who are the people he approached and called to ministry with him. One of the very first people he called to ministry with him was a tax collector. Now, in the Roman Empire, tax collectors were probably like between drug dealer and mafia. So you can kind of like take your pick, but either way, this is one of the first people Christ calls to come walk with him and to come learn and come serve with him. Now, the good people of the day, I'm sure, were looking at this like, what is going on with this teacher? Why is he choosing these people? Like, why are you going to this guy's house to have dinner? Like, you do know what this guy does for a living, right? And who's hanging out with him. But I don't think that kept Jesus from speaking the truth to him. I don't think it kept him from being truthful at all. But we know that people were drawn to Christ. People, he didn't hypnotize everybody and put them under a spell and then bring them in, put stuff into their head. People were drawn to him. They felt good being near him. He exhibited a love and a kindness and a tolerance that I think he calls us to here in this scripture. I mean, when you read your New Testament, it's full of Jesus delivering equal measures of grace and truth. Equal measures of saying, I didn't come here to condemn you. I'm not condemning you. I'm tolerant of you. I'm giving you kindness and love. But guess what? I'm also going to give you an equal measure of truth. What you're doing here is wrong, or this thing needs to stop, etc. But primarily, I think he approached things from the lens of love, and that's what he calls us to do as well. Because I think hate, when we look at it, it's like a full-grown, mature version of all these little seeds that exist in all of us. The seeds of hate are animosity, contempt, prejudice, intolerance. And we've all got that to a certain degree. There's somebody in all of our lives that we're like, yeah, I'm not really going to go over there and wade into that mess or talk with those people, or, they're different than us. So I wanted to take a look at some scripture from the first century to kind of set the table for talking about tolerance, kindness, and love, and then maybe have like a little illustration that'll help us all kind of get this and grab it and take it forward into our week with us and do something actionable with it, not just sit in church and listen to it be preached. So to read this first century text, I think first we got to put it into context. I think it's so easy for us to read our Bibles and just kind of, we're looking for something and we're skimming over it, or okay, what did Jesus say about this? And we don't oftentimes, I think about the actual first century context or the things that were going on when we read those scriptures. So one of the scriptures we're going to look at in Romans, you don't need to put it up yet, we'll get there, is written by Paul, one of our founding fathers of our church. He's writing to a church in Rome, and he's talking to them about kind of how to interact with one another out of kindness and tolerance and love. So to set the table for all this, we kind of got to step back and remember, how did Christianity start? What spurred Christianity on in the first place? Well, it wasn't a radical religious faith-based belief that started Christianity. Actually, when Christ was crucified, the day he was crucified, everybody stepped away from that and said, game over. I guess this whole thing didn't work out. I guess this guy isn't going to be a king and deliver a kingdom for us after all. It was the resurrection. It was an event that spurred on Christianity. This event happened and was well documented, and I love the way Andy Stanley says it. He says it the best. He says, a guy predicted his own death and resurrection and pulled it off, and 3 days later they were having breakfast with him on the beach. This was a huge, miraculous thing. This was a big deal, and this is what propelled Christianity forward in the first century, was this amazing event that people were called to share with one another, that eyewitnesses documented and shared with one another. So this spread rapidly, and you have guys like Paul that traveled the Mediterranean rim expressing the gospel to everybody, sharing it with everybody. And what did it create? It created a big mess. because the Jews felt that they were the chosen people of God. Christ was the Jewish Messiah that the Old Testament, the Jewish Torah, spoke to about coming. So the Jews, we're Lord's people. This is our Messiah. And at the time, Jews didn't associate with non-Jews. Jews wouldn't go into the household of a non-Jew. They wouldn't cross the threshold of the door because they felt it would make them unclean. They felt these people were common and they were not God's people and they were set apart. You want to talk about a prejudice. You want to talk about a little bit of a mess. I mean, I have this vision of these first century churches where, these Jewish communities that are a little bit, spread apart from Jerusalem have this, they get this word that the Messiah has come and there's been a resurrection and they're waiting, and all of a sudden Paul shows up on the doorstep. He's like, guys, I got the good news. Like, we're going to share. I've talked to Peter. Peter was there. He saw the resurrection. This is amazing. We're going to share it. And all of a sudden, all the Jews are like, wow, this is great. Hold on. Let me get on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Let me hit up all my Jew buddies. We're going to come over here. We're going to tell everybody about it. And Paul's like, no, we're going to tell everybody about it. Like everybody? Yeah, no, everybody. We're going to go down to the pagan shrine. We're going to go down over here. We're going to bring all these people together and we're going to tell them the good news. Think of the tension this created. People were brought up in this faith. We don't associate with those people. What are you talking about? Those people are common. They're unclean. But no. There's a new covenant. Things have changed. I kind of envision it like maybe like Seinfeld meets Woodstock. You know what I mean? Like, can you imagine like some of those first worship services where you get these Jews that are like, okay, we're going to do this, Paul. We're going to bring everybody in, right? And so these people come in and they're like, hey, buddy, I'm great to worship your Messiah. I'm pumped for this. I brought my little pagan idols. I'm just going to set them up right here before things get going. And then when the worship service starts, they're like, whoa, what are you doing? No, my buddy George, he's going to sacrifice a chicken in the corner when things really get heated up because that's what we do, these Gentile or pagan worship services. So, it was a mess. There was a lot of tension. There was a lot that had to be dealt with. And Paul writes a great passage kind of, talking about how do we deal with this tension in the first century. I think there was a lot more tension and prejudice within the church body back then than we can even comprehend right now. So this passage is in Romans chapter 14, verse 1 through 6 is where we're going to start on this. And I love the way Paul starts this. He says, as for the one who is weak in faith, welcome him, but not to quarrel over opinions. One person believes he may eat anything, while the weak person eats only vegetables. So right there, vegetarians are weak, Bible says so. I didn't say it. But anyway, no, I'm just kidding. Let not the one who eats despise the one who abstains, and let not the one who abstains pass judgment on the one who eats. For God has welcomed him. Who are you to pass judgment on the servant of another? It is before his own master that he stands or falls, and he will be upheld, for the Lord is able to make him stand. In the next two verses, he's talking about the Sabbath. Jews, it was paramount to keep the Sabbath holy. I mean, they had like 682 laws you had to follow, and like 627 of them were about the Sabbath. You couldn't sharpen a pencil, no email, no social media, any of that stuff. So verse 5 says, one person esteems one day as better than another, while another esteems all days alike. Each one should be fully convinced in his own mind. The one who observes the day observes it in honor of the Lord. The one who eats, eats in honor of the Lord, since he gives thanks to God, while the one who abstains, abstains in honor of the Lord and gives thanks to God. So Paul's painting us a picture here of like, look guys, it's going to be a diverse crowd, okay? You're not going to agree with people. There's going to be a lot of tension. That's not the point. Tolerance, kindness, and love are the point. Let's come together around that, and God will do the work. The final verse from that chapter, well, not the final verse, but the final verse I want to read, verse 13, I think sums it up really good. Therefore, let us not pass judgment on one another any longer, but rather decide never to put a stumbling block or hindrance in the way of a brother. Now, he said don't pass judgment. And that gets thrown around all the time, like incorrectly. Like, oh, don't judge me, man. Like, well, I mean, he didn't say don't be truthful. He said don't pass judgment. Christ said, I didn't come into the world to condemn you. It's not our job to condemn people. It's not our job to judge people. We can be truthful, certainly, but don't pass judgment. So to put the final punctuation mark on this sentiment and kind of just, paint this first century picture and then talk about, how we can deal with tolerance, kindness, and love. the last passage I want to read is Peter. Peter, the rock of the church. If you're Catholic, he's the first pope. Huge figure, founding father of our faith. And God called Peter to go spread the word to the Gentiles as well. And again, Peter's a Jew, so he's like, okay, hey, it's God's calling me. I get that. I've been through 3 years with Jesus. I understand. God tells me to do something. I'm going to go do it. And there's this wealthy man named Cornelius who is a Gentile, a non-Jew. But he's a seeker. He's been praying for God. He's been looking for God, and he hears that Peter's got this gospel that he can share. So he sends to him hey, come share it with me and my family and my friends. So he gathers all of his family and friends. He invites his mother-in-law, his brother, his buddies. They're getting set up for a cookout. And Peter says, okay, I'm going to go down here and I'm going to talk to you. And we read in Acts 10:28. This is what Peter says when Peter gets to the door of these people that have invited him into his house. And he said to them, you yourselves know how unlawful it is for a Jew to associate with or to visit anyone of another nation. But God has shown me that I should not call any person common or unclean. We just read over something like that in the Bible. Can you imagine inviting somebody over to your house? This guy down the road has got a message. He's got a message. Oh, great, we're going to get the whole family together. And he comes to the house, he knocks on the door, and he says, yeah, so about this place. Normally, I wouldn't step in here. Because of the whole unclean thing. I don't mean it's not tidy. You guys are kind of unclean, and you're common, you're kind of, common, code word for beneath me, you know what I mean? But God's told me that that's okay, and that shouldn't bother me anymore. So let's talk. What, dude? Are you kidding me? There's some serious prejudice and tension there. Even Peter feels it, But he moves past it. And if you really want to delve into this, it's great. You can look at Acts 15. It's not up here today, but thank God for guys like Paul and James in our early Christian faith that, they got to this point where the Jews were like, hey, look, Christ is the Jewish Messiah. You want to do this whole Christianity, follow the way thing, you got to convert to Judaism. You're going to have to be a Jew. And there was this big conflict in the church. And thank God that we had, astute enough founding fathers of this faith that they stood up and said, no, that's not what it's about. Christ taught love. That's what it's about. Christ taught grace to everybody for the whole world. And we're not going to put an extra burden on anybody. But that's Acts 15. You ever want to check that out? That's a good read as well. So that kind of sets the table. I think that's a great illustration of the tension that they had to work through. We've got tension in our own life, in our workplace, politics, church, family. There's a lot where our little prejudices creep up, and we don't really act or behave or see it with tolerance, kindness, or love. So what can we do about that? I really think there's when I was thinking about it, 4 elements that we need to kind of walk through to get to love from kindness and tolerance. Now, we could probably boil it down to less than 4, or we could probably make it 18, but these are just the 4 that I picked, so it's not, set in stone. So I thought, what's something I could do to kind of set an example, that we could all kind of visually see, and then we could take with us out into the world. And then it hit me. I was thinking about it. I'm like, in modern times, what's one of the most contentious, issues surrounded by prejudice, misunderstanding, dare I say, even hate? I'm sure you're thinking of it right now. It hit me. Sushi. Sushi. For sure, right? I live in the business world, so we do a lot of, meetings and stuff like that, and we'll go to lunch and all that. I tell you what, you take 6, 7 business people from different walks of life working on a project. You say, let's all go to lunch. We'll fine-tune the details on this thing. And somebody says, great, let's go grab sushi. Immediately. You see 3 people, yeah, that's awesome. The other 3 people start doing their body language changes a little. Well, if we have to get sushi, I guess. I don't, it's and then some are downright I'm not going with you guys. See you later. And there's just some real visceral feelings that sushi kind of brings out of people. So I thought, what a better way to illustrate this than learning to be tolerant and kind and love sushi a little bit more through these 4 elements, and then we could take that lesson with us. So I picked a couple of not so random volunteers. Maybe you guys can help me get this onto the stage over here, and we can kind of get going with this example. So we got to keep this level.
Okay.
So I don't want anything jumping out of the bowl, you know what I mean?
Is it still alive?
Well, it won't be for long,
It is sushi. You never know.
See, and that's the thing. See, that's, people have all these misconceptions. People that aren't sushi people are like, oh man, it's all raw, it's all uncooked. I mean, 6 out of 10 people die when they eat sushi, right, from poisoning. And it's made out of like fish eyeballs exclusively, right? And that's not really the case, but it does take some tolerance. I mean, the first thing that hits you when you walk into a sushi joint is this is what they hand you. They hand you some chopsticks, and you're like, okay, what is this? Like, we don't have forks? Like, come on. And so that there takes a little bit, getting used to, a little tolerance. Here you go, bud. And there you go. So, what are my 4 elements, and how can we relate this to sushi and people? I think the first thing that we need to do if we're going to be tolerant and we're going to have kindness and love toward people that we don't understand, people that think differently than us, is we need to understand them, right? If we understand people a little bit, we start there. It opens up a door for kindness and to come through. And really, ultimately, even the people that seem so different than us, we have 90% of the things we care and love and are upset about we have in common. They feel pain, we feel pain. They feel grief, we feel grief. We want to be loved, we want to love. So we got to start with understanding other people. So the first thing that I have here for us to check out is a little dish called shumai. So this is a pretty common dish in a sushi place. Open up that sauce. That's what really kicks it. It's good. This is a pretty common dish in a sushi joint. Now, when I explain this to you, I could tell you that, I don't know, you want to drink that, man. I can tell you that it's really just a dumpling, a little breading around it, maybe a little bit of shrimp in there, some other goodness, you know what I mean? But it's really like grandma's dumplings, with a Japanese twist, No raw, nothing raw in it at all, so you can set your mind at ease. Now that you understand what's in it, we can all try a bite, and we can see what we think. We can go from there. Go ahead, dig in. Dip it in that sauce, though. You want to get some of that sauce. That's good. There'll be leftovers. There'll be leftovers. Hold on. I want to get that out of there. So what do you think? It's pretty good, actually. Right. See, there you go. So initially, we were a little concerned. Now we understand it a little bit better. Whoa. Wait, it's got an aftertaste that really kicks in good. So now that we understand it a little bit more, we can take the next step. And the next step is really getting outside of our comfort zone. If we're going to approach people that we're not comfortable with, that think differently than us, first we got to understand them, then we got to get out of our comfort zone. It's actually going to take us doing something. We have to engage with them. Maybe we're going to have to invite them to lunch. Maybe we're going to have to, go to an event with them, or just cross our yard and talk to that neighbor that we don't get along with. So we got to get out of our comfort zone. So the next thing we're going to do is a little tuna, a little crunchy tuna. So we got some tuna here. It is raw, so I mean it's a comfort zone thing. Like, we're going to get out of our comfort zone here. But one of the interesting things you find once you allow yourself to get out of your comfort zone is that raw fish is actually a lot less fishy than cooked fish. It's really clean, it's really good. Normally this would have rice on it, but as a sushi purist, I didn't want the rice to sit in the fridge overnight and kind of like dry out. So we're going to kind of make this as we go. We're going to open our little, spicy crunchy sauce here. We got a little bit of crunchy batter. So just go ahead and grab one of these right here and dip it in some of this crunch like that. Get a little sauce on that thing. That is good. Yeah, we'll pass the plate after, yeah? I tell you what, the crunch right there, the crunch is what makes that, huh? Normally there'd be a little rice, How you feeling? Good? Okay, good. All right, nice. So we got outside of our comfort zone. We realized we're probably not going to die from eating this stuff. Now we can take... Maybe. Well, yeah, you throw some wasabi and ginger on there. That's great. Right. So the next, actually you jumped to the third step before so the third step in understanding people and interacting with them is controlling our emotions and reactions. You're good at that already. So you've already jumped into that third that third realm. So now we understand people. We've gotten out of our comfort zone. Now we've got to control our emotions and reactions here, okay? Because look, let's face it. If we're going to step into life with some of these people that think differently than us, behave differently than us, they're going to say and do things we don't agree with. They're going to bump up against our worldview, and that's going to frustrate us. But again, if we're called to act with tolerance, kindness, and love toward them, we got to check ourselves a little. It's more important to build the relationship and show some love than it is to necessarily beat people over the head with our worldview. So here we got, this is what you came for if you're into sushi. I mean, this is sashimi, just straight up fish. No rice, nothing, just unadulterated in all its glory, goodness. Maybe you look at it and you're like, oh, it's raw, it's slimy. Well, we're going to control our emotions and our reactions, and we're going to dig in, and we're just going to try a bite of this straight up raw salmon. It's the best, by the way, the salmon. I'll tell you what, pull that ginger on it too if you want. Here. You can get back into your comfort zone if you want.
No, you got this.
All right. Nice. Go. You can pick it up with your fingers too. We're family here, so.
Oh, big piece.
So, controlling our emotions and our reactions is important, right? Hey, all right. There you go. This has only been in my car since Thursday, so you should be all right. You're all right back. Guys are doing great. I mean, we're building some love up here for sushi. I could just tell. So the final thing is really, not about us. This final element, through tolerance to kindness and love. And this final element is relying on God to help us to see things His way. So first we got to understand people. We got to step out of our comfort zone. Then we got to control our emotions and reactions. But ultimately, we've got to step back and see things the way God sees things. And we can't do that on our own. We got to ask Him to come into our lives and help us see things the way He sees things. Because you know what? Again, He sent Christ down here for the whole world, for everybody, for all of creation. Every human being that's walking on this planet is made in His image. And His desire is that all their hearts would turn to Him. And we're the tool to be used to turn those hearts toward Him. So we've got to rely on God to help us see it His way. So how do you think God sees an octopus? I think God sees an octopus as this just beautiful creature, that lives in the ocean. It can change colors. It's fascinating. I mean, I don't think at all He sees it as like this slimy, tentacled, like with suction cups on it and stuff like that. I don't think He sees it that way at all, So, in our final journey here of building tolerance and love towards sushi, I'll take the big piece. I'll save you. We're going to jump right in. I mean, you get some tentacles, you get some good, but I mean, it is real. It's goodness, right here. So we're going to jump into it. I'll tell you what. No, that thing was killed at least an hour ago. So there you go. I think that's kind of an illustration of how we build our way up to tolerance and kindness and ultimately love. It was illustrated by sushi. So how we give a hand to our sushi lovers here, our newfound sushi lovers. Yep. Thank you very much. Yep. There'll be leftovers. Just contain yourselves. Don't rush the stage. Okay? You guys can go ahead and sit down, and we'll wrap this up. I really appreciate you guys' help here today. Matt can't get enough of it. Yeah, he's a convert now. Look at that. Okay. In any event, thanks for humoring me. I think that was a fun illustration of tolerance, and kindness, and love. I really think that's what I got this piece of octopus in my cheek still. I really think that's what we're called to do as Christians. And something like 9/11, the hate and violence in the world that we can't understand, is so big and overwhelming. You know what? Yeah, that's hard to wrap our head around. But we do have a role to play, and that's right here. And again, I want to do something actionable with this. So I want to challenge everybody to take this into this week and find your octopus, whatever your octopus is, and engage them. I, for one, am going to take my octopus to lunch. I work with an octopus that I have a hard time controlling my emotions with, and settling down with and just seeing as God sees. So I'm going to invite that person to lunch. I'm going to go to lunch with them. That might not be what you have to do. I mean, maybe for you, it's just waving to your neighbor at the mailbox whose dog poops on your lawn all the time. And you're like, I haven't talked to this guy in 5 years. If his dog comes over here again, I'm going to boot it back into his lawn, Maybe you just got to break the ice with that, and you got to wave to that person. You got to start a conversation. Maybe it's a family member that you need to pick the phone up and you need to call. You need to say, I'm sorry, or I love you, or I forgive you, or let's get coffee. Whatever it is, I think we're called to step out of our comfort zone and to engage these people that don't think the way we think, don't look the way we look, and are different than us. So
invite your friends to sushi?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I need the social media people, the savvy, like Twitter, Facebook. We'll do like a hashtag octopus at Christ Community Church. That'd be sweet. Like as you go through the week and you do your thing, like I wave to my neighbor, hashtag octopus CCC. You know what I mean? Like I don't really know how all that works, but I think it sounds cool. So let's do that. So anyway, there you have it. Let's pray, guys.